So, having said that, tonight, our first guest is an award-winning author and magazine editor who chronicled cinema classics and the iconic directors, writers, and editors who have brought them to life. His acclaimed essays and books have been published internationally, and his most recent book, Dr. Feelgood, co-written with New York Times bestselling author Dr. William Burns, J. Burns, has been published by Skyhorse Publishing. Dr. Feelgood tells the true story of physician Dr. Max Jacobson, who quietly changed history by injecting his specifically created meth cocktails into several icons of the 20th century, including President John F. Kennedy, my wife Jackie, Elvis Presley, Elizabeth Taylor, Truman Capote, President Nixon, and others. Dr. Feelgood changed the way they thought, acted, and reacted. The eye-opening historical tome has been quoted worldwide and serialized by the London Daily Mail and on the front page of the New York Post. His newest book, co-authored with William J. Burns again, is titled The Life and Times of Mickey Rooney, a comprehensive and explosive biography of the legendary actor and multi-talented performer. Set for formal release on October 15th by Gallery Books, a division of Simon & Schuster, The Life and Times of Mickey Rooney profiles Rooney's incredible life story along with his tragic last years. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce the author of those books, Mr. Richard A. Lertzman. So, Mr. Lertzman, tell us about, first let's talk a little bit about Dr. Feelgood. How did that all begin?
Many years ago,
Actually, let me get another mic here for you.
Okay, thank you.
Testing?
And I thank you, Herbie, for inviting me to this. This is wonderful.
Well, it's lovely to have you, Rick. We've known each other for a couple years now, right?
Right.
It's the first time we met, by the way.
We did talk.
In person.
Right. Dr. Field, I was doing a, does this have to, okay. I was doing a research for a book on Robert Cummings, Bob Cummings from Love That Bob. And when I was doing research for the book, Bob Cummings was known as the writer of Stay Healthy and Young, Stay Young and Vital. And he was known as a health fanatic. And I got to know his family, his wonderful family, Melissa and his daughters, and his 5 children from Mary. Is that better? Okay.
Much better.
And as I got to do research, I met a gentleman named Art Linkletter, who many of you may remember. And Art said, well, what are you going to do in the period when he was put into a straitjacket and put into hospitalization for his drug addiction? I go, Bob Cummings? Bob Cummings was a drug addiction? And then I talked to Dwayne Hickman, who many of you remember from The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. And he was Bill Burns, and my co-writer, had been his agent for that book. And he was also the star of Love That Bob, the Bob Cummings show. He played Chuck, the nephew, on Love That Bob. And he told me a story. He said, one day, we went back to New York for a promotional tour, and we went into an office, and it was horribly messy, and in there was Truman Capote, Tennessee Williams, and Anthony Quinn. And he goes, why would all these great people be in this office? And all of a sudden, Dr. Jacobson came out, and he was wearing a lab coat, and it was blood-filled and soaked. His fingernails were dirty. And Bob goes, Dr. Max, I'm so happy to see you. And he said, Chuck, and his character, Dwayne, was played Chuck. So he never called him Dwayne, he called him Chuck. He said, Chuck, you should come back in a shot. It's filled with monkey gonads and sheep sperm. And Dwayne, I think, was 20 years old. Dwayne goes, I don't think so. So he went in, and he was tired from the trip, so when he came in, he said Bob was walking very, very slowly. When he came out, Bob was leaping. He was like, had this great energy. And he goes, and Bob, what's in this shot? He goes, Chuck, it's energy. It's a health. It's a vitamin. It's monkey gonads and sheep sperm. Well, it was 30 milligrams of methamphetamine with eel, monkey gonad, sheep sperm, and human placenta. Because Bobby Kennedy later had it analyzed because his brother was getting the same shot. So when I told this to my agent, he said, your book isn't on Bob Cummings. Your book is on Dr. Feelgood. And so I went and we researched, and we met Secret Service agents. We met some brilliant men. I met Dr. Larry Hatterer, one of the great psychiatrists. He was 90 years old. I could not keep up with him. He was so brilliant. I had to take notes just to understand what he was saying. You should have brought a dictionary, but there wasn't spell check. There wasn't a Google check at those days.
Right.
So as we went on to research, I got to interview Gore Vidal. I got to interview some of the great people. Andy Williams I interviewed. I went up to Berkeley and interviewed Eddie Fisher. And the list kept getting longer and longer. And I mean, a lot of current people. And it was just absolutely amazing. And this man, Max Jacobson, who was a Jewish refugee, he escaped Nazi Germany, was a good doctor. He trained under Carl Jung, he trained under Sigmund Freud, a brilliant man. But what he wanted to do is he wanted to become known. He wanted to become one of the great doctors, and he knew that would happen through celebrities. So he went out, and Alan J. Lerner was a major patient of his. Eddie Fisher was one of his star patients. Marilyn Monroe was a patient, which he at one time expelled her as a patient because he never treated anybody who were mixing a lot of different kind of drugs. But in the end, Marilyn Monroe was given an injection the last night of her life, because what he did was he supplied vials and small gauge needles. And that night, when she had taken a lot of drugs, methamphetamine, which was dropped off by his son, he was Max Jacobson West Coast. His name was Dr. Tommy Jacobson, and he represented Max on the West Coast with Eddie Fisher and people who are alive that I don't want to say, but it was a long list, and it was a fascinating life. But in the end, and I'll tell you one more story about that, he treated John Kennedy. John Kennedy had a college roommate. His name was Chuck Spaulding, and Chuck Spaulding John Kennedy was on the campaign trail in 1960. He was really dead tired after West Virginia, and he brought him to Max Jacobson, and he said, "Chuck, are you out of your mind?" He said, "Look at this office, it's a dump." And Max Jacobson came out with his coat full of blood stains and his dirty nails. But the minute John Kennedy, who suffered from Addison's disease, he suffered from colitis, he had a horrible back, and he was in such pain, and after Max Jacobson gave him an injection of methamphetamine, he was leaping. The pain had gone away. I mean, he was a miracle man to John Kennedy. So from that point on, he was connected to John Kennedy, and then eventually Jackie Kennedy, who suffered from postpartum depression and from a fear of cameras, she became a patient, and she was treated by Max Jacobson up until nearly till his death. So John Kennedy depended on him, and over the years, Bobby Kennedy really disliked Max Jacobson. He thought he was a low-grade doctor, and a Jewish doctor out of New York. Didn't respect anything Max did. A lot of the Dr. Eugene Berkeley, Dr. Cohn, Dr. Travell from the White House thought he was a charlatan, and they didn't know what was in his shot. So Bobby Kennedy, while Max was at the White House, Bobby Kennedy lifted some vials out of his bag and had it inspected by the FBI labs. When Bobby saw what came back, that it was 30 milligrams of methamphetamine and eel and monkey gonads and sheep sperm, he went to his brother. He goes, "Are you out of your mind? You're being shot up with methamphetamine." And Jack Kennedy looked at him and said, "I don't care if it's horse piss. It makes me feel good." So eventually Bobby confronted Max Jacobson, and Max Jacobson was coming to the White House, and he flew with a gentleman named Mike Samick, who I got to know, who was the senior vice president of ITT. Beautiful apartment. I went to his apartment in Lexington Avenue with Monets and the most gorgeous paintings, and in the middle of all these great paintings was a Mark Shaw photograph of John Kennedy, Pierre Salinger, Prince Dash Radswell, who was Lee Radswell's husband, and the president, all urinating off the side of the road during the 10-mile walk. And that was in the middle of all these great paintings. This man was a war hero. He was awarded with one of the highest medals as before being a silent warrior. He flew planes. So this was a great hero. Mike Samick would fly him to the White House. So Mike flew him to the White House, and there's Bobby Kennedy standing there red-faced. And Max was a rather imposing man. He was over 6 foot tall. and very strong, well-built. And Bobby said, "You are not going to come into this. You're never going to see my brother again. You're done. You're finished. Never come back. Don't take your dirty black bag and your." And Max was red-faced. I mean, he was actually patriotic, and he loved this country, and he was so honored to be treating the president. So he got back on Mike Samek's ITT plane, flew back to New York, and wrote a letter of resignation to Evelyn Lincoln. And when John Kennedy got that letter, John Kennedy was, he was really needed Max Jacobson. He really allowed him to act as the president. He gave him that luxury because he was in such pain, because of the Addison's disease, because of the bad back, because of the colitis, and he had a lot of problems that the public at that time didn't know about. So John got on a plane and he flew to New York and went to the Carlisle Hotel where he stayed all the time. And he begged Max Jacobson, "Please come give me a shot. Please, don't listen to Bobby. You're with me. I'm the president of the United States. You do as I." And so Max pulled out an injection of 30 milligrams and shot it into John's neck, the president's neck. And he said, "That's not enough. I've been away for a lot of days. I'm in a lot of pain." He said, "No, Mr. President, I can't do that." He goes, you must. So he injected him with a second shot of 30 milligrams. Now, we have this account from Paul Landis, who's still alive, who's a Secret Service agent who was standing right there. And we have it from Mike Samek, and we have it from a doctor named Lawrence Hatterer. John Kennedy, as soon as Max left, John Kennedy had a psychotic break in the Carlisle Hotel. Started taking off all of his clothes. Was completely buck naked in the middle of the hallway of the floor they had of the Carlisle, and he started running around and then going into stairwells, up and down stairwells. And the Secret Service go, "What are we going to do? We can't put him in a straitjacket. He's president of the United States." So they asked, and they found Dr. Larry Hatterer, who was the chief of psychiatry at Cornell University and one of the great psychiatric minds. And Larry Hatterer came in and injected President Kennedy and brought him down. And he goes, "Where did this come from?" He goes, "It was from Max Jacobson, the Secret Service agents." He goes, "Get him on the phone." So he got Max Jacobson on the phone, and he said, "Dr. Jacobson, I just put down the president. He had a psychotic break. What did you give him? What was in those shots?" He goes, "Dr. Hatterer, what you do is you come to me, I'll give you the shot, and you see how you feel." And Larry Hatterer goes, "No, Dr. Jacobson, I'm not doing that. I just need to know the contents," which he never found out. And that really worried a lot of people, because here's the man with his finger on the button who was being controlled by methamphetamine. And it was a rather frightening story. At a time that the world was in a lot of turmoil, the pressure was getting to the president, and it eased his pain. And that's a long-winded answer to your...
Well, there was a movie that Connie Stevens did. I just came to me in 1973, The Sex Symbol. Anybody remember that TV movie she did? How close was? Apparently, that was supposed to be the Marilyn Monroe story, but not really. What are your thoughts on that?
Max Jacobson was he ran under the radar for many, many years. He really was not known. He treated his office. He would keep, if you stayed in his office, and Anthony Quinn did that, and I talked to Valentina Quinn, his daughter, Eddie Fisher, Tennessee Williams, Truman Capote, Gore Vidal. They stayed in his office, and the reward for being there at 4:30 was to get a methamphetamine shot. It was a party, a cocktail party, and everybody in New York wanted to go to this great cocktail party. No one knew what it was. He said it was a vitamin cocktail. So I don't think any movie was based on it at that time, because he really, until he was disbarred, which he was, he ran under the radar, and there really was not a great awareness of him.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah. So what has been the reaction to your book in general?
Historically, there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of people interested in how Max Jacobson actually changed history. There was a lot of awareness of Max Jacobson. Prior to that, there were a lot of books written with little snippets. Some great writers, some great historians had snippets, but no one really dug into a story. And now there's kind of an awareness of, you got to look at John Kennedy as a man in pain. So he didn't do this as a party or to to make him feel high. He did it to really get rid of the pain. But it kind of you take a look at how drugs have affected, especially methamphetamine, which has grown to be an even worse problem in today's age. And Max Jacobson was one of the synthesizers of the original methamphetamine in 1930. And what people don't know is he taught Dr. Theo Morell, who treated Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler was treated with methamphetamine the same as President Kennedy. And it was the same reaction.
Wow.
But it's had an effect, we.
Who's running this show?
So it was a very dark novel, and I really was looking to tell the story of Bob Cummings. I got to talk to Eileen Wesson, whose dad, Dick Wesson, wrote a lot of the shows for Love That Bob and Control It.
Now,
I love classic television.
And Dwayne Hickman, didn't he say that he started like mimicking Bob in his mannerisms in the way, like, no, cut that out. No,
Dwayne is one of the wonderful people, and he's he's a lot like his character, very very low key, and we became very good friends, Dwayne and his wife, and Dwayne said it was like a master's class when he did Love That Bob. He started out, George Burns owned the show with Paul Henning, and so there's a three-way partnership, Bob, Paul Henning, and George Burns. So he said, there's Jack Benny every day teaching me how to do mannerisms. There is George Burns, and he said, George was hard. George was a tough teacher. There's Bob Cummings, and he really kind of mimicked.
You sounded just like him right now when you said Bob.
Now cut that out. Yeah. But Bob Cummings was a if you remember, not just television, but Hitchcock and great films. And he was an actor and with Ronald Reagan in
King's Row.
King's Row. Thanks, Steve.
No,
I'm sorry. But Bob was a top actor, and he really aped a lot of his mannerisms, and if you watch even Dobie Gillis, you'll see a lot of Bob Cummings in Dwayne.
Oh, absolutely. Now, but also Bob was what do you call it?
Health oriented,
Yes.
with vitamins and the whole thing. That's why it was such a shock, right? When
A good friend of mine, his name was Rocky Kalish, who was a great writer. He actually was the creator of Gilligan's Island with Sherwood Schwartz's brother, and his name was taken off for many years. And Rocky was doing the new Bob Cummings show, which was based on an Aero car. It lasted a year, and he was a detective that had a car that turned into a plane.
What year
It was a
was
real
that?
car, 1964. And this is before he did a show with Julie Newmar called My Living Doll. And then Julie's told me a lot. Julie was wonderful with me, recounting her stories. And so he said they came to his house, and Mary was his wife, who he had 5 kids with. And he said they went for dinner, and they're really hungry, looking. After a long day, Bob wanted to talk about the series and how the direction it was going in. So they put pills on his plate, all kind of vitamin pills. And Bob Finkel was the producer of the show, was with Rocky Kalish, and Bob said, "This is our dinner?" And Bob believed in a health regimen, but he also wanted to stay young because in the business, as you reach past 50, you have to keep that young, vital image, and he thought the methamphetamine gave him that.
So you transitioned now. Your second book is The Life and Times of Mickey Rooney.
Right. I did a book with Lon Davis a few years back called Stooges Among Us that recounted. My father went in my uncle, who had a appliance store in Los Angeles. He would give credit to Larry Fine from the Three Stooges. So the deal was he would let him slide on their payments for Moe, Larry, and Curly, if he allowed him to bring his family to the studios. So he told my father, who was 18, "Come and I'll introduce you to the great stars. You'll meet the best." So my father's on a train and he's thinking, Gary Cooper, Clark Gable. I'm going to meet Clark Gable. Katharine Hepburn. I'm going to meet all these great. So he came in, and my Uncle Carl took him to Columbia Studios, which was Gower, which was, they shot the shorts there with Jules White. And it was like not a great place. And there are the Three Stooges, and he goes, Uncle Carl, these guys are the shorts. They're
It's a long, isn't
they're
it?
the
4
short.
feet tall. And he said they were playing poker. So as I grew up, my father told me these stories. I'm going, Dad, tell me more about this, because the Three Stooges this is my era. I mean, I loved watching the Three Stooges. So I got a chance to stay with Mo Howard and his wife Helen in their house, and he taught me all about how he saved a lot of money with pies that he was able to hit directly. And he was very serious about this, and an intelligent guy, very serious. And he took me to the motion picture home, and Larry Fine was there. He had some strokes. And Larry and him were arguing just like the film. And I mean, I wish I had a cell phone, what we would have today. He was calling him a nincompoop, you knucklehead. I'm going, well, Larry's in a wheelchair. And Larry has a problem speaking. And then he took me to see Bud Abbott. So I wrote a chapter in a book about the Stooges among us.
Well, now you say short size. Mickey Rooney certainly was small, but yet his talent was massive. And one of the things that I always loved about him, and I think probably everybody did, is that he just loved to act. You'd see him on the big screen, and then you'd see him on an episode of Twilight Zone or whatever. He never said no, and he treated each role with the same energy that he would give even the larger roles. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. He was one of the. Laurence Olivier called him one of the great actors. A lot of people. Marvin Kaplan was with him in It's a Mad World, but he knows. There's a lot of respect for Mickey as an actor. As a person, there's another story. There's another side to him. But as an actor, as a performer, there's not very many people that last 90 years in the business. He started in 1923 doing burlesque. Moved in 26. He was in silent films in 1926 with Coley Moore. He did a film in 19.
Back up to the cafe, please. Back up to cafe.
Let's go.
We'll take that out.
By 1927, he was doing a short series called the Mickey Maguire comedies. And they were cheap comedies trying to cash in on the Our Gang comedies. And he became a star at 6 years old in the Mickey Maguire comedies. Was a has-been by the time he was 11. Got back, and he got discovered by David Selznick and put into signed by MGM. He was at Universal for a while, signed by MGM in 1934. So Mickey was with. I look at pictures and I see him with Charles Chaplin. I see him with Wallace Beery, and he goes all the way there to 2014. He's with Ben Stiller. Mm-hmm. He has a film coming out this year called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That'll be 90 years in film, and he existed.
Amazing.
And his personal life we had to deal with. Herbie. He was married 8 times. He had 8 children, 2 stepsons. We also met a great story. And I can't tell you her name. She's a very famous actress. Was in films from the 1940s, and she was his mistress of 65 years. And that'll be in the book, and letters between them are going to be in the book.
And you interviewed Jan. You interviewed
Jan. I don't know if Jan's on here, but Jan was great. And
so is this authorized? Is this the authorized?
It's not authorized because we don't want to have editorial control from anybody, but it is. Jan is behind the book. She supports the book. Chris, her son, supports the book. I got to talk to his wonderful daughters. Kelly Rooney is just we're such a great person. I know. This is Roger Neal, who's a friend of mine, who I'll tell you a quick story. And I don't know if Roger, when Mickey Rooney passed away, he had just done Night at the Museum Part 3. And Sean Levy said, what a wonder to work with. And so in 2014, he flew to Vancouver and did Night at the Museum Part 3. And he did just a couple days' work, but he was paid $250,000.
Wow.
And he died 3 weeks later, and it was $18,000 in his bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And that was tied up. And he was in dire straits. And Kelly Rooney was just they were all panic-stricken. And Roger Neal is the man who arranged it and got him buried at Hollywood Forever. It's a beautiful. I got to know Roger that way, and it was, a lot of people were out to help Mickey, but You know, sometimes he was his own worst enemy, but you know, he had a rough childhood. He supported his family starting at the age of 3.
But as a professional, whatever he showed up, he was always there, always knew his lines, yes, no, maybe?
Always a professional. Whoever I talked to, I interviewed Carol Ballard, who was the director of The Black Stallion, and he said, I was always, you know, told, oh, not Mickey Rooney, he's going to be hard. He's going to tell you what to do. And Carol Ballard said, of all the films and everything he's ever worked on, Mickey Rooney had a center to him. He said when he came into that role, he knew the part, and he brought something that he's never seen another actor bring. He thought he was the greatest actor he's ever worked with, and he worked with Coppola, who was his friend, and he worked with some of the great directors. Whoever I talked to, whoever worked with Mickey Rooney, aside from personal antics, as a professional, they all thought he was brilliant as an actor. I interviewed Barry Morrow, who wrote The Rain Man, and he brought Mickey into Bill, which was a great film in 1983, and Mickey won an Emmy for it. And Mickey came.
Bill, yes.
And he said, Mickey, I want you to watch the real. I want you to see the real Bill. I want you to see films of him, because Barry is the one who, you know, saved Bill's life. And Mickey goes, I don't have to watch. I know what it is. And he came in and he was doing a kind of a palsy victim. He goes, Mickey, I'm not going to allow this. You have to get the heart and soul. And eventually he got to the core of what Bill was, and he was brilliant. I mean, it was absolutely not comedy, not doing Sugar Babies. He did a brilliant dramatic role.
Yes. I think many people compare that movie sometimes to Lucille Ball's Stone Pillow, because she did, you know, she was known as Lucy, and then she did that amazing TV movie about a homeless woman who was completely against type.
Right.
And it was a similar case with Bill.
Yeah.
Didn't they do a sequel too?
They did a sequel too. Yeah. But Barry Morrow was just a wonderful human being, a great person. Said that Mickey just brought so much to that role, and he remained friends to him to the end of his life.
So now Jan was married for 30 years?
Jan met Mickey in 1974. She was dating Mickey Rooney Jr. And Mickey Rooney Jr. brought Jan to. Mickey was living with an agent named Ruth Webb. I don't know if many remember.
Yeah.
And Ruth Webb had birds and cats, and Mickey was divorced from his 7th wife. And she said, "You can stay with me." So Mickey said, "Fine," because Mickey was flat broke. I mean, he wasn't getting his. Well, there's a long story. He lost his MGM pension, and so he was not getting any money at that time. So he lived with Ruth Webb, and Mickey Jr. who's a musician and a very talented musician. Mickey Jr., Timmy, and Teddy were the Rooney brothers, and had a pretty good career in the '60s. They were a good rock group. Mickey brought her to the party, and Mickey saw Jan, and Jan. Mickey Jr. went away on tour, and in that time period, Mickey became engaged to Jan.
It's like a Love Boat episode.
And so they were married in 1978. So they did not get divorced. They were married.
Okay, so what was it that stuck with her that didn't stick with the other? I mean, what was it? How could that be?
Jan lent him some control. You know, he was always looking, at least in what we thought, was for a mother figure. Mickey's mother was. She was a prostitute at times. She was a hard drinker. You know, you'd always find. Ava Gardner said she saw when she met Ava for the first time. Ava walked in and she goes, "So is he in your pants yet?" And she said she's sitting there with a glass of scotch and reading the racing form. And she goes, she was the toughest, hardest. So it was a tough life. I mean, his father ran away when he was 3. So he had a kind of rough life, and he always looked for that mother figure, and I think Jan provided stability. And Jan and him, you know, like any marriage, went up and down, but...
Okay, so the other marriages, they faded because of him, or because of the wife, or because of both? And she obviously did something different beyond the fact that she was the mother figure. Did she ever want to pull away and he said, "No, you're staying with me"? Was it ever a situation like that?
I think they were rather close. They appeared all over the country.
Oh, they performed together.
They were performed together in Let's Put On a Show. Jan is an excellent singer, a wonderful singer. And Jan did shows with Mickey for a lot of years. She did stage plays in London with him. She played, they did Cinderella. So she appeared in movies and she was always at his side most of the time.
Amazing,
And her son, Chris, was Mickey's manager for a long time.
amazing. So do you think that the hard life that he had growing up, and this is the case many times with many actors and many performers, contributed to his talent? Would he have been a lesser actor if he would have had an easier life?
You know, Mickey was so, a lot of his talent was he started out at 3 in burlesque. So he knew stage. He knew silent films. He knew how to act without words, without dialogue. He was in early films. He did vaudeville. He did radio. He did television. He learned his craft at an early age, and he just had an amazing. He also had an innate talent, a
Right.
great talent of
Right.
as a performer.
And many child performers, when they grow up, they lose that thing, whatever it is that made them stars. But he grew into it. His talent grew with him.
I think, like any child actor, he eventually lost that cuteness, and he went through a very rough period. But he persevered. I mean, he
He
appeared.
reinvented himself.
I don't know if he reinvented himself. I think he just grew into a character actor, and he had a lot of friends in business. Richard Keene was a good friend of his. Blake Edwards was a good friend of his from childhood, and a lot of people, respected his talent. And I mean, we have a wonderful, you'll meet later, Karen Kramer, whose husband wanted to create and she did create probably the greatest comedy. It's a mad, 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 mad world.
And you're doing a book on, your next book is Stanley Kramer?
With Karen Kramer, we are going to tell the true story of one of the great directors, one of the great producers, one of the great filmmakers of all time, who really changed our world. He brought to us Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
One of my favorite
He
movies
brought
of all time.
the Defiant Ones. He brought great actors like Sidney Poitier. He brought a change to society, and he looked at how we live. You watch Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is still a great film, but you go, what were they? Why was there such prejudice? Why was there such hatred? But I think a lot of the change was initiated. I think film has a huge impact in our society, and I think Stanley Kramer's films made that kind of impact.
Thank you very much for the segue. Thank you so much, Ruth. That was lovely. Let's have a nice
Okay.
hand here.